I'm Micah Donovan, and until 2 days ago, I thought I understood what it meant to plan something with love. For the last 6 weeks, I'd been running on fumes, doubling shifts, staying up past midnight tweaking proposals, rescheduling client calls across 3 time zones, just so I could fund this trip without dipping into our savings. A luxury Mediterranean cruise, hand-selected from a high-end charter company, something I'd researched in secret for months. Every detail was tailored to Maeve's tastes: olive groves, Greek Isles, lavender oil massages, rooftop dinners overlooking the Adriatic. She used to talk about it before bed like it was a dream she'd never wake up into. So I built it for her. And I did it under my business alias, Donovan Holdings, hoping to unveil it like a magician pulling silk from thin air. My plan was simple: tell her the day before, show her the tickets, watch the smile spread across her face when she realized her family was included too. Because I knew how much that mattered to her. Her older sister Brielle, her cousin Sadie, even her annoying Uncle Maurice who insists on bringing an acoustic guitar everywhere. I coordinated it all. Quietly, painstakingly, lovingly. But then 2 days before departure, while I was poring over my final packing list: passport, sunscreen, blazer for dinners, noise-canceling headphones for the plane, I overheard Brielle on speakerphone with Maeve. I was in the kitchen packing toiletries when I caught it. "We finalized the guest list," Brielle said, with that sharp, breezy tone she always used when she felt important. "Just make sure Micah doesn't slow us down." That stopped me. I put down the travel-sized toothpaste and turned toward the hallway. "Guest list?" I waited for Maeve to correct her, to laugh and say, "Micah planned the trip," or even just a soft, "Don't be rude." But there was silence. Just a soft rustle, then a chuckle. "He's got his hands full." "I'm sure he'll understand," Maeve said. My stomach turned. I walked slowly toward the bedroom, where Maeve was curled up on the bed with her tablet open and her knees tucked under her. She looked up when I entered, smiled faintly, then went back to scrolling. "Finalized the guest list?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. "I thought we'd already done that." She hesitated. "Oh, yeah, I think Brielle just meant the itinerary. You know how she is." I didn't push right away. I nodded, backed out, and returned to the kitchen. But the words lodged in my brain like a fish hook. Finalized the guest list. Slowing them down. I opened my phone and pulled up the group chat Maeve had with her family. The one I'd been invited to 2 weeks prior, but barely contributed in. Mostly just heart-reacting messages and sharing updates like, "Just confirmed transfers in Mykonos." I clicked the latest link from Brielle, a shared Google Doc titled Cruise Manifest Plus Cabin Assignments. My name wasn't on it. Not under guests. Not under shared amenities. Not even under dietary preferences. I scrolled 3 times. Nothing. In the spot where Maeve's name was listed, her +1 was marked TBD. But on the next line, in tiny italics, "Update. Galen confirmed." Galen, her yoga instructor. The guy who wore compression pants to brunch. The guy who always managed to bring up breath work within 30 seconds of conversation. He had a man bun, a tan like he worked outside for a living, and the kind of self-assured posture that said he believed he'd been a Roman emperor in another life. Galen. I shut the screen and just sat at the kitchen counter for a moment. The tile was cold against my forearms. I stared at the blue glass fruit bowl we'd bought last summer and felt something inside me shift, not loudly, but with quiet finality, like a door slowly clicking shut in a long hallway. When Maeve came into the kitchen an hour later, her eyes looked guilty before she even spoke. "Micah," she began, "I wanted to talk to you about something." I held up a hand, not in anger, but restraint. "Don't. Just tell me the truth." "Am I going?" Her mouth tightened. "I think. Maybe it's better if you don't. Not because I don't want you there. It's just Brielle thinks." "Brielle thinks," I echoed, more to myself than to her. "She thinks your presence might complicate the group dynamic," Maeve said carefully. "There's a rhythm to these things, and Galen already does the morning sessions." "The guy who charges you $300 an hour to tell you to inhale through one nostril?" I asked. I wasn't even trying to be petty. It just came out. She sighed and looked away. "Maybe sitting this one out will give us some space." That word again. Space. I wanted to scream. Not out of rage, but out of disbelief. I had bled hours and dollars into this gift, this experience. And the same woman I wanted to surprise was telling me to stay behind because her sister preferred the view without me in it. But I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I didn't slam drawers or break dishes. I just nodded. Slowly. The way you nod when you finally see the edge of something, when the shape of the cliff reveals itself, and you realize how far someone's willing to let you fall. All right, I said. I'll stay back. She seemed relieved. Not grateful, just unburdened. But what Maeve didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the entire booking was in my name. The ship, the crew, the accommodations, the transfers. All of it. Paid through Donovan Holdings. Galen wasn't a substitution. He was an intruder. And the thing about names, mine was carved into the foundation of that ship. So I packed quietly that night. Not in sadness. In preparation. Because sometimes, the best way to answer a disappearing act is to show up exactly where they think you don't belong. It's amazing how betrayal never feels as dramatic as the movies make it out to be. There's no thunderclap. No slow zoom. It just settles into your body like a dull ache. That night, I stood by the kitchen window, lights off, watching the glow from our neighbor's porch flicker through the blinds. The house was quiet, except for the low hum of the fridge and the occasional clink from Maeve's spoon against her yogurt bowl. She always ate yogurt before bed, said it helped her sleep. That night, it just reminded me of how many small routines I'd helped build, only to be written out of the narrative like I never belonged in it. I turned to her. She was scrolling through something on her phone, probably the group chat with Brielle. Probably more updates about Galen's protein shake preferences or whatever energetic clearing rituals he wanted to implement on board. I waited a moment, studying her face in the pale screen light. Then I said it, soft, controlled. So, Galen. Maeve's thumb paused mid-scroll. Her lips pressed into a line. Micah. No, really, I said, stepping closer, arms folded. Let's talk about Galen. The emergency substitution, right? Because my presence might ruin the group dynamic. She didn't look at me. Just set her phone on the counter like it weighed too much now. It wasn't my idea. But you didn't stop it either, I replied. Micah. I planned this trip, I said, and my voice broke a little there, against my will. I've been working double shifts for 6 weeks. You know that. I chose the charter company, I arranged the rooms. I didn't even tell you because I wanted it to be a surprise, your dream vacation with your family. And somehow, I've been replaced by a guy whose entire skill set is telling people to breathe better. She finally looked up. Her eyes weren't cruel. That almost made it worse. There was a softness there, a familiar guilt. Like she was ashamed not of what she did, but of how long it took me to notice. I didn't ask for this, she said, but Brielle thought it would be better this way. And I agreed. Why? She shrugged like it hurt to admit it. You've been so distant lately. Always tired. Always working. I didn't know if you even wanted to come anymore. And Galen, he's been helping me feel centered. More like myself. I laughed. I didn't mean to. It was short and dry, the kind that comes out when disbelief hits harder than anger. So this trip that I funded, that I planned, you just decided I should sit out? Let me guess. You told the others I was okay with it, didn't you? Maeve's silence was answer enough. Space, I said, echoing her earlier word. That's what you said, that this would give us space. But space is earned. You asked for space. You don't erase someone to create it. She rubbed her temples, exasperated now. You're making this bigger than it has to be. No, I said quietly. I'm just finally seeing it for what it is. I walked out of the kitchen. My heart was hammering, but my mind was clear. Not out of calmness. Out of resolve. She thought I'd go quietly. That I'd take the hint, play the role of the understanding husband who steps aside while his wife takes a luxury cruise with her sister and her six-pack yogi. She forgot who she married. I spent the rest of that night in my office, doors shut, laptop open. The booking confirmation was still in my inbox. A digital receipt from the charter company, addressed to Donovan Holdings. That's me. That's my name. The manifest listed me as the primary charter holder, and guest privileges were entirely up to me. The irony? Galen was never approved. Neither was Brielle. I added 2 guests under my own list. My younger brother Nico, who texted back immediately. You serious? You're taking me on a yacht? Hell yes. And Eliza, my childhood best friend, who helped me choose the cruise line in the first place. She replied with a simple, finally. A good reason to dig my swimsuit out of retirement. I debated Maeve, whether or not to leave her on the manifest. But the longer I stared at her name, the heavier it felt. I thought about her laughing during those group video calls when Galen made his little spiritual jokes. I thought about the way she hadn't defended me when Brielle made that just don't slow us down comment. I thought about the flicker of relief in her eyes when I agreed to stay behind. And then I deleted her. The next morning, I poured coffee like nothing had changed. She came down in her robe, hair tied back, humming something. She kissed my cheek like it wasn't soaked in her betrayal. I just smiled, handed her a travel mug, and said, "Make sure to pack early. Private ports can be strict about time." She blinked, surprised. "You're still driving me there?" "Of course," I said. "Wouldn't want you to miss the boat." That day passed like a movie I was no longer starring in. She flitted around the house, gathering swimsuits and beach reeds. Brielle called 3 times. I heard her ask if Micah was cool. Maeve replied each time with a little laugh and said, "He's being mature about it." Mature? Sure. I packed quietly that night, light, efficient, deliberate. A soft carry-on, no checked baggage. Just what I needed: linen shirts, travel shoes, the small black notebook I kept for moments like this. I jotted down a few lines. Replaceable, not optional. I underlined it. The next morning, we all arrived at the dock. Maeve in a flowing sundress, oversized sunglasses. Brielle in full influencer mode, filming everything for her Instagram stories. And Galen, stretching like he was preparing to run a triathlon instead of board a yacht. I wore a polo shirt and sunglasses. No emotion, just silence and presence. They laughed, posed for photos. Didn't even glance my way until the hostess approached us at the security gate and asked for the guest list. That's when Brielle stepped up, full of practiced charm. "Hi, I'm Brielle. This is Maeve, Galen, Sadie, Uncle Maurice, and Harper. We should all be on the list." "Oh, he's not coming." She nodded toward me like I was a forgotten Uber driver. "He's just dropping us off." The hostess looked at me. "Sir." I smiled faintly and reached into my pocket. Because this time, I wasn't holding space. I was holding proof. The sky was flawless that morning, blue so deep it made the white hull of the yacht gleam like bone in sunlight. The private dock smelled like sea salt and ambition. Maeve stood next to me, her fingers loosely curled around her designer tote, hair blowing just enough to make it look like a commercial. Brielle, naturally, was front and center. She wore a silky champagne-wrapped dress and walked like the concrete was a runway. Galen stretched his arms above his head like we were about to enter a yoga retreat instead of a luxury cruise. I stayed behind them, calm, silent. My polo shirt was wrinkle-free, my sunglasses mirrored, my jaw relaxed. I hadn't come to beg. I came to watch. The yacht sat in the harbor like a secret whispered into the sea. 40 meters of handcrafted indulgence, 6 private suites, 2 sun decks, a pool, and a 12-person crew. And it was all already mine. They didn't know it. Not yet. But they would. Brielle approached the check-in station like she owned it. The hostess wore a crisp white linen uniform, tablet in hand, smile poised and professional. "Welcome to the Andiamo, chartered for a 7-day sail." "Name, please." "Brielle Emerson," she said with a smile that could sour wine. "I'm the group coordinator. Should be under Emerson, Galen, he's our wellness coach, and Maeve Donovan." The hostess nodded and began scrolling through the manifest. I watched Maeve glance at me and then quickly look away, pretending to be fascinated by a passing seagull. Brielle carried on with the list. Uncle Maurice Emerson, Sadie Lynn, Harper Dell, oh, and Maeve's not bringing a +1, she added smoothly, casting me a side glance. "So he's just here to drop us off." She didn't even say my name. Like it was a smudge she wanted to wipe clean from the morning. The hostess frowned. "Just a moment, please." Her eyes flicked to me. "Sir, may I have your name?" I opened my mouth to answer, but before I could speak, Brielle leaned toward her and whispered, "He's not on the list. Don't make this weird. He's just tagging along. Our family has this handled." The hostess hesitated. She wasn't rude, but her stance shifted. Less accommodating, more formal. "Sir, I'm going to need your name for confirmation." I kept my sunglasses on. My voice came out even. "Micah Donovan." A pause. Her eyes darted back to the tablet. And there it was. That flicker. That subtle lift of the brow that meant something didn't line up with what she'd been told. "One moment," she said, tapping. Behind her, 2 of the crew members stepped off the boat, standing at attention. Brielle looked impatient. "Honestly, it's fine. He's not with us. Let's not make this a scene." "You know what makes a scene?" I said quietly, erasing someone who built the stage. Maeve's lips parted slightly. Brielle rolled her eyes. Galen crossed his arms over his chest like I was interrupting his aura. The hostess suddenly stood straighter. Her tone changed. "Oh, Mr. Donovan," she said, blinking. Primary charter holder. My apologies. You are, of course, expected. The air shifted like someone had opened a hidden door and let all the lies out into the sunlight. Brielle laughed nervously. Wait, you're joking. He's the what? The hostess turned to the crew. Please assist Mr. Donovan with boarding. Galen choked on his green smoothie, coughing into his elbow. Maeve took a half step back, color draining from her face. She looked at me like she was seeing a ghost. Or worse, someone she thought she could forget. I adjusted my collar, turned slightly toward the group, and smiled. I didn't want to make this weird, I said evenly. But since my name was the one removed, I figured I'd bring it back with a little gravity. Maeve opened her mouth, closed it again. Brielle, stunned silent for the first time in her life, sputtered, there must be a mistake. I handled all the group details. You can't just. I can, I said. And I did. Every cabin, every meal, every amenity, booked under Donovan Holdings. Which, as you may now understand, is me. The hostess was already motioning the staff to begin loading luggage, mine, not theirs. I stepped closer to the group and lowered my voice so only they could hear. Here's the thing about disrespect. It has a way of echoing. When you tell someone they don't belong, they tend to remember. And sometimes, they write the guest list next time. Maeve reached for my arm. Micah, please, can we talk? We had 6 weeks to talk, I said, not pulling away, just looking her directly in the eyes. You chose not to. You chose to let someone else fill my seat, my bed, my place. So no, there's nothing left to talk about. Galen tried to step in. Man, this energy is toxic. Say another word and I'll manifest your swim trunks overboard, I said, keeping my voice perfectly still. This isn't your retreat, Galen. You're not even supposed to be on this dock. The hostess gave a polite but firm nod. Mr. Donovan, would you like your guests escorted aboard? I turned to the waiting crew, to the still-running yacht behind us, and said, kindly escort my guests aboard selectively. Selective. That's the word that landed like a flare gun in the middle of them. I could practically feel Brielle's blood pressure spike. Selective? You can't be serious, she snapped. I'm deadly serious, I replied. Nico Donovan, Eliza Haynes, and Jude Byrne. That's it. Maeve's brow furrowed. Jude? My aunt. She's the only one who ever asked if I was okay, I said softly. She rides. As the others stood frozen in place, the crew moved quickly, ushering Eliza and Nico, who'd arrived just in time, toward the yacht's gangway. Eliza waved sweetly at Brielle. Nico grinned like a man who had just walked into the best plot twist of his life. I turned to the rest. Don't worry, I said. I'll post photos. And then I walked up the gangway with the calm of a man who didn't need to shout to be heard anymore. Behind me, the dock was silent, except for Brielle's voice, breaking under the weight of her own entitlement. Micah, you can't leave us here. But I already had. They say names have power, but you don't realize how much until yours re-enters a room that tried to erase it. Mine was never loud, never one to fill spaces with noise. But that day, standing at the edge of the yacht's gangway, it rang out like a bell that wouldn't stop echoing. The second the hostess uttered it, Mr. Donovan. Everything shifted. The glances, the body language, the lies they'd wrapped themselves in began to crack under its weight. I saw it in Brielle's face first. That sharp little smirk she always wore, the one that said she'd already won, disappeared like fog meeting sun. She took a small step back, like my name had shoved her. Maeve, still trying to look composed, blinked as if the world had just pivoted 90 degrees beneath her. And Galen just stood there with his protein shaker frozen in midair, eyebrows raised, jaw slightly open. The mighty retreat leader suddenly speechless. The crew didn't miss a beat. Welcome aboard, owner, the hostess said, with a quick bow of her head. She turned to the other staff. Prepare Mr. Donovan's suite. Captain's orders. I didn't need to say much. The title alone did the speaking for me. But I did say one thing. I stepped forward, just far enough to be eye level with Brielle, and nodded to the crew. Kindly escort my guests aboard, I said, selectively. Selective. That word was still souring in Brielle's mouth when Eliza arrived, suitcase in hand and sunglasses perched perfectly on her head like she'd. Maeve touched my arm as I turned to follow the others up the gangway. Her fingers were soft, tentative, like they were reaching for a version of me she thought would still pause for her. Micah, please, she whispered. I didn't know. Her voice cracked. That surprised me, not because she cried, but because she did it so quietly. Like the tears weren't meant for me, just the image she was trying to preserve. I looked at her, really looked. The dress she wore, flowing, expensive, probably picked for Instagram shots on the deck. Her hair had been freshly styled, makeup subtle but deliberate. She didn't look like someone who expected to be left behind. She looked like someone used to being centered, used to being prioritized, even by the man she'd asked to stay home. "You didn't want to know?" I said softly. "That's worse." She dropped her hand. Brielle opened her mouth to protest again, but I raised one finger. "Don't," I said. "This is done." The crew guided me aboard like royalty, and the moment I stepped onto the main deck, the wind hit me with that clean, open sky scent I hadn't known I missed. Sunlight shimmered off the water, and the deck gleamed beneath my feet. For the first time in weeks, no, months, I felt something loosen in my chest. Ownership, not just of the yacht, but of myself again. We moved toward the interior. Inside was exactly what I'd paid for. Teakwood floors, marble counters, wide windows that framed the horizon like art. A full kitchen, custom bar, plush lounge with Italian leather. There was even a piano tucked into the far corner, not because any of us could play, but because it was beautiful. The crew showed Eliza and Nico to their cabins, Jude to hers when she arrived 10 minutes later, and then brought me to the master suite. The room was a statement in quiet power. King bed, ocean view balcony, private bath with rainfall shower, and a deep soaking tub that looked carved from stone. I stood at the edge of the room for a second, just breathing it in. Not as a guest, not as a placeholder, as the one who made it happen. The captain arrived shortly after, a broad-shouldered man with steel gray hair and a grip like iron. "Mr. Donovan," he said, shaking my hand firmly. "Pleasure to finally meet you in person. We're set to sail once your final instructions are in." I nodded. "We go as scheduled. One note, though. Those not on the updated guest list remain dockside." "Understood," he said without blinking. "We've already notified the port coordinator." And just like that, we pulled away. From the dock. From them. From the version of myself that had asked for permission to belong. I watched from the balcony as the yacht eased into the water, smooth and deliberate. The waves kissed the sides like they were welcoming an old friend. Behind us, I could just make out the figures on the pier, Maeve, standing still. Brielle pacing. Galen throwing his arms up like he'd been miscast in his own documentary. The distance grew. I didn't wave. I didn't gloat. I simply turned away. That evening, as the sky burned orange over the open water, the chef prepared a dinner that looked like a magazine layout. Grilled sea bass, saffron risotto, fresh fig salad, and a bottle of Italian wine that tasted like it had been aged on purpose just for this moment. We ate on the top deck under lanterns strung like constellations. Nico toasted me. To the man who booked the boat and the comeback. Eliza clinked her glass to mine. To knowing your worth before someone else decides it. Even Aunt Jude raised her water glass. To clarity. It may hurt, but it never lies. I smiled genuinely. The kind that touches your ribs. I hadn't realized how much I needed that. Just a moment free of performances, of explanations, of being told to make room in places where I was expected to shrink. Later that night, I posted one picture. Just one. Me, standing at the helm of the yacht, sunglasses on, sea stretching endlessly behind me. No caption. Because when you say everything with presence, words become optional. There's something cathartic about watching people scramble to rearrange a story they thought they'd already written. After the manifest was revealed and I stepped aboard my own yacht, the dock behind me transformed into a stage of disbelief. Maeve didn't chase me. She stood frozen, arms at her sides, probably calculating which part of this nightmare could still be salvaged. Brielle, on the other hand, didn't shut up for a second. She barked at the hostess, at the dock workers, at the crew members who ignored her with professional ease. And Galen, he tried to keep it cool, but his jaw clenched tighter with every inch of water that separated us from the pier. I didn't rush. That was the point. This wasn't a getaway. It was a cleansing. Each step deeper onto the yacht felt like I was walking out of a skin I'd been forced to wear too long. I stood on the upper deck and looked back one final time, not out of sentiment, but to choose, to decide who came with me. Not just onto the yacht, but into the next version of my life. The invitation wasn't open. It was earned. The first name I said out loud was Nico, my younger brother. He wasn't part of the original group. He hadn't been on any family calls, didn't weigh in on who got which suite, didn't request special meals. But when I called him 3 nights ago, and told him everything, he didn't laugh or ask if I was serious. He just said, "Where do I need to be, and what should I wear?" That's loyalty. He shows up when it matters. Then there was Eliza, my childhood friend, the one who helped me research charter companies when I wasn't even sure what port sizes meant. We'd stayed close over the years, platonically bonded by a shared history no one else in my adult life had access to. Eliza never asked for anything. She just gave a recommendation here, a knowing glance there, the kind of presence that reminded you who you were before you got buried under someone else's expectations. She deserved this, not out of pity or courtesy, but because she remembered my name even when others tried to scrub it out. And finally, Jude, Maeve's aunt, the quiet one, the one who always asked how work was going, who pulled me aside at family dinners to ask if I needed help fixing the sink that Maeve said could wait until next month. I noticed how often her opinions got brushed aside. The way she'd speak, then fall silent mid-sentence when Brielle interrupted. The way she'd frown when Maeve got too sharp but never said anything, probably out of respect or exhaustion. She never made a big show of defending me. But I remembered the way she looked at me the night of Maeve's birthday dinner, when Galen had shown up unannounced and Maeve had introduced him as a surprise guest. Jude had caught my eye and mouthed, "I'm sorry." That mattered. So I turned to the hostess and said clearly, "Nico Donovan, Eliza Haynes, Jude Byrne, please assist them with boarding." The crew moved quickly. Nico had just arrived and was wheeling his single suitcase toward the gate, looking half like he'd stepped off a red-eye, half like he was ready to party. When the staff greeted him, he nodded, spotted me, and threw up a mock salute. "Captain Donovan," he called. "Permission to come aboard?" "You're late," I smirked. Fashionably. Next came Eliza. She was already on site, standing quietly at the edge of the crowd, watching everything like a woman who already knew how this would end. She didn't wave. She just walked forward as the gate opened, her dress fluttering in the breeze like she belonged in a brochure. And finally, Jude. She had a tote bag, a small duffel, and that same calm energy she always carried. She didn't look surprised, only a little proud. As the hostess greeted her, Jude leaned in and whispered something. I didn't catch it, but I saw the hostess nod respectfully. As for the rest, they stayed put. Brielle tried to step forward, gesturing wildly. "What the hell, Micah? You're leaving without your own wife." I looked her dead in the eyes. "I don't allow disrespect on my ship," I said flatly, "especially from people who erase names. You can't seriously be punishing everyone for a misunderstanding," she snapped, turning toward Maeve for backup. "Say something." Maeve didn't. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. Maybe she knew any defense would collapse under its own hypocrisy. Maybe she just realized she no longer had a seat at the table. Either way, her silence was the loudest thing I'd heard all day. Galen scoffed. "This is ridiculous. I was told I'd be leading group sunrise yoga. I build a program. I have clients. This isn't your retreat," I said sharply. "You're not a guest. You're an interruption." The hostess cleared her throat gently. "We're ready to depart, Mr. Donovan." "Thank you," I said. I turned away from the dock. From Maeve's averted gaze. From Brielle's clenched fists. From Galen's wounded ego. The gangway was pulled up. The engines hummed to life. And the yacht began to glide forward, cutting the water cleanly, leaving behind nothing but the sound of waves and a story that no longer included them. On board, Nico explored the bar like a kid in a candy store. "We have a bartender?" he asked, voice rising in disbelief. "Two," I replied. "And a chef." Eliza had already claimed a sun lounger, sunglasses on, book in hand. "Not bad," she said without looking up. I was worried this trip might be awkward. Jude joined me at the railing as we left the last bits of the dock behind. She didn't speak at first, just watched. Then, quietly, she said, "You did the right thing." "I know," I said, "but it still feels strange." "Strange is good," she replied. "Means you're not numb." As we sailed out into the open sea, I let the wind hit me full in the face. It didn't sting. It cooled, carried something new with it. Not revenge, not regret, just clarity. And sometimes, clarity is the cleanest luxury of all. The moment the dock disappeared, the silence shifted. It wasn't the absence of noise, but the absence of expectation, the relief of no longer having to shrink yourself to fit inside someone else's version of you. As the yacht slipped into deeper water, the engines hummed like a quiet declaration. This, right here, belonged to me. And the luxury? That wasn't the destination. It was finally being surrounded only by people who didn't make my presence feel like an inconvenience. The crew was seamless. Every need anticipated before we even knew we had it. Eliza's suitcase had barely hit the cabin floor before a smiling steward appeared with a welcome mocktail, garnished with fresh passion fruit and mint. Nico was already exploring the upper deck like he was casing it for a heist. "You know there's an onboard cigar lounge?" he yelled, poking his head out from a sliding glass door. "You hate cigars." "I like options," I called back. We hadn't even been sailing an hour before I started to notice the subtle shift in the air. How different life feels when you don't have to brace yourself every 5 minutes. I wasn't dodging side comments. I wasn't translating Maeve's silences. I wasn't standing at the edge of group photos waiting for someone to say, "Come in." I didn't have to ask for space anymore. I owned it. Lunch was served on the rear deck beneath a wide canvas canopy. Sunlight filtered through, dappling the teak table that was already dressed in crisp linen, sea glass chargers, and hand-folded napkins. The chef, Matteo, an Italian man with the posture of a dancer and the voice of a lullaby, presented each course like it was his heart on a plate. Octopus carpaccio, burrata drizzled with lemon oil, freshly baked focaccia that still held the warmth of the oven. Jude let out a low hum of satisfaction. If I had known betrayal came with sea base and a view like this, I would have stopped being nice to Brielle years ago. I laughed harder than I had in weeks. Nico raised his glass, some imported sangria the staff had suggested and toasted, to being the ones who said yes to the right person. I didn't post right away. That would have felt like gloating. But by the time we dropped anchor near a secluded inlet off the coast of Corsica that evening, the sunset practically begged to be photographed. It wasn't about showing off. It was about reminding the world, and maybe a few very specific people, that cutting someone out of a picture doesn't mean they disappear. Sometimes, they frame their own masterpiece. I posted one shot. A wide-angle view of the deck, lanterns flickering, plates cleared, wine glasses half full, and our silhouettes bathed in gold. No tags. No captions. Just that image. It was enough. The response was immediate. Not in public comments, but in private. Maeve's name popped up on my phone screen around 10:07 p.m. "Maeve, we need to talk." I let it sit for a while. Maybe she expected a knee-jerk response. Maybe she thought I'd been waiting for her to reach out. I hadn't. I'd been waiting to not want her to. That was the real shift. An hour later, another text. "Maeve, this is all just a misunderstanding." The classic pivot. From silence to control to rewriting the story. I could almost hear her voice in those words, gently layered with implication. "You're overreacting. You're hurting us. You're making this something it doesn't need to be." I left her on read. Another hour. Another message. "Maeve, you're blowing things out of proportion." Translation. "Stop embarrassing me." I closed my phone and joined Eliza on the front deck, where she was lounging under a light blanket, sipping tea. The stars overhead were obscene. Too many to count, bright enough to make the sea glow. I sat beside her, not speaking. She didn't ask what was wrong. That's why she was here. When I returned to my suite just after midnight, I checked my phone one more time. For new messages. One from Maeve. 3 from Brielle. "Brielle, you're not just hurting Maeve. You're hurting the family. Brielle, this trip was about growth and healing. You've turned it into a power play. Brielle, we were trying to spare you embarrassment. Guess that backfired." I laughed, quiet, bitter. Spare me embarrassment. That was rich, coming from the woman who tried to uninvite me from the trip I designed. And then Maeve again. Maeve, Brielle made me do it. There it was. The slow unraveling. The attempt to shift blame. To cast herself as the victim. It was predictable. And yet, it still stung. Because I remembered how she looked at Galen in those planning meetings. I remembered the sound of her laughter when he made one of his pseudo-spiritual comments. I remembered how quickly she had asked me to give her space. She hadn't been manipulated. She'd been complicit. I almost didn't open Instagram, but something told me to check. And when I did, I found it within seconds. Galen had posted a new photo to his grid. It wasn't taken today or even yesterday. The timestamp was from 2 weeks ago. It was him and Maeve in a hot tub, his arms slung lazily around her, their heads leaned in close, sharing something unspoken. The caption read, "Manifesting more secret moments like this." Secret moments. I stared at the photo for a long time. Not because I was shocked. I wasn't. But because it was confirmation of what I'd already started to accept. I had been replaced before I even knew I was losing ground. This wasn't about a trip. It was about being erased in stages. The texts. The lies. The smirks. the omission from the guest list. It had all been deliberate. And now, they were watching this luxury from the outside. Watching the yacht sail without them. Watching what it looks like when you bet against the man who signed the check. I drafted a response, then deleted it. I didn't need to speak anymore. Instead, I posted one more image, this one from my private balcony. The moon hung low over the water. I stood barefoot, holding a glass of scotch, back turned to the camera. Eliza had taken it without me knowing. It was the kind of photo that said everything without trying to. The caption? Luxury tastes better when you've earned it. I hit post, then powered down my phone, and let the sea carry the silence. By the third day, the Mediterranean sun no longer felt like a backdrop. It felt like a statement. We docked briefly near Amalfi for the morning. Just enough time for Jude to walk the cobblestone streets and Eliza to drag Nico through a shop full of ceramics he swore he didn't care about, but somehow ended up buying anyway. I stayed behind, leaning against the railing on the starboard side, watching the waves brush up against the hull like they were trying to tell me something in a language only silence could speak. It was in that quiet, with the scent of citrus and salt thick in the air, that my phone buzzed against the table beside me. Maeve again. Her tone had shifted. The bravado from earlier messages had thinned out, softened around the edges like she'd finally realized I wasn't playing. I let the notification linger for a moment before I picked it up. Maeve, I didn't know Galen was going to post that. Of course. Start with the deflection. Maeve, it was supposed to be private. It didn't mean anything. I stared at the message, fingers curled around my glass of still water. Didn't mean anything? That's what people always say after the damage has already swallowed the room. Another ping. Maeve, you're taking this way too far, Micah. We were just confused. We. The word hung in the air like smoke. We. She and Brielle? She and Galen? Or the diluted concept of we she used to include me in only when she needed the illusion of unity? I didn't answer. Not yet. Instead, I stood and walked inside to the cool marble of the interior lounge. Jude was reading, her glasses perched on her nose, eyes tracking me as I passed. Another message? She asked. I nodded. She's shifting gears now. Regret. Maybe guilt. Hard to tell. Jude hummed. Funny thing about guilt, it usually shows up when the consequences do. She went back to her book. I moved to the lounge's far end, took a seat by the window, and opened the phone again. New messages. 3 in a row. Maeve, you're throwing away everything over a single mistake. Maeve, I didn't sleep with him. Maeve, it was just comfort. You weren't there. There it was. The quiet confession. Not an apology. An explanation wrapped in self-preservation. The kind of wording designed to win sympathy without actually admitting wrongdoing. The same voice I'd heard 100 times before when she wanted to reset the conversation in her favor. You weren't there. I was. Just not in the version of the story they wanted. And still, I didn't reply. Instead, I pulled up Galen's profile again. It was public. Of course it was. Men like Galen didn't believe in privacy, they believed in curation. His page was filled with filtered photos of fruit bowls, shirtless meditations, poorly formatted quotes about vibration frequencies, and soft-lit images of clients who all looked like auditioning models. But it was the stories that got me. One from 2 days ago, already expired but saved in his retreat life highlight. I tapped it. There she was. Maeve, laughing beside him on a sun-drenched balcony. He kissed her on the cheek. She leaned into it. Caption, not everything has to be labeled. Some things just are. Some things just are. No wonder she wanted space. Back when I still thought this trip was a gift, I remember worrying I'd overdone it. Maybe TH. Now, I realized I hadn't shown off enough. They'd made me invisible in a story I authored. And the worst part? Maeve had let them. Not by shouting. Not by plotting. But by standing silently while it happened. My phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't her. It was Nico. Nico, hey. Brielle just DM'd me. She said you're being cruel. Nico, she wants me to talk sense into you. LOL. I smirked. Of course she did. I typed back. Tell her I'm out of range. Spiritually. Nico. LMAO. Will do. I set the phone down and stared out at the water. Then I picked it up again and scrolled back through Maeve's messages. Each one a layer of erosion, chipping at the foundation we built. But I saw it clearly now. I wasn't the one eroding. I was the rock they kept trying to pretend didn't exist. She didn't need space. She needed someone who wouldn't remind her of who she used to be before Galen whispered about chakras and vibrations. before Brielle decided I wasn't aesthetic enough for their curated little family narrative. She needed someone who would vanish quietly. And I had, for a while. But now? Now I had the spotlight, the sea, and the story. By late afternoon, we were anchored off the coast of Sardinia. The crew had arranged a tasting experience, truffle cheeses, cold cuts, local wines. Eliza and Nico were laughing about something when I walked over to the table. Eliza looked up and said, "You look like someone who just read the final chapter." "I did," I said. "And no twist," I replied. "Just confirmation." Jude raised her glass again. "Here's to closure." I lifted mine too. And to screenshots. That night, I got one more message from Maeve. "Maeve, I don't want to lose you." Short. Almost sincere. Almost. But she already had. Not when she invited Galen. Not even when she deleted my name. She lost me when she looked away at the gate. I didn't respond. Because I knew what came next. And I'd already called Regina. By the time the yacht pulled into Santorini, the tension in my chest had dissolved into something else, something that almost felt like clarity. The days leading up to this stop had stripped away the fog Maeve used to wrap herself in. Each text, each weak excuse, each attempt to rewrite what had happened, they weren't lifelines. They were reminders. The version of us she was trying to salvage didn't exist anymore. Maybe it never had. Regina Polk didn't need much. That's why I'd hired her. She didn't ask for emotional backstory or hand-wringing details. I sent her the Instagram screenshots, forwarded the itinerary changes, and shared the group messages that accidentally left me out. Her response was efficient, surgical. "Understood. Clean exit. I'll have the paperwork prepared and couriered. Where will you be in 48 hours? I told her. And she delivered. We docked in Santorini just after 10 in the morning. The island was all whitewashed buildings and blue domes, postcard perfect and quiet enough to hear your own thoughts. The captain's assistant came to me while I was finishing breakfast, Greek yogurt with honey, fresh figs, and coffee so dark it felt like a secret. "Mr. Donovan," she said, polite and measured. "A courier has arrived at the port entrance. He's here for you." I stood, smoothed the collar of my linen shirt, and followed her down the marble stairwell to the lower deck. The sun was sharp by the time I stepped off the gangplank. A man in a navy blazer stood at the curb beside a sleek black car, holding a leather portfolio and an electronic signature pad. "Mr. Donovan?" I nodded. "I have documents for a Maeve Donovan. Time sensitive. Delivery per instructions." I signed, took the folder. Inside were the divorce papers, all neatly prepared. Regina didn't miss a detail. The filing was clean. The narrative was polite. The terms? Protective. I'd kept our joint assets simple on purpose. Maeve had her savings, I had mine. The house, technically mine before the marriage, was exempt. The yacht charter, of course, belonged entirely to Donovan Holdings. What I handed her today wasn't just a breakup letter. It was an exit ramp. Maeve showed up at the port an hour later. I was waiting for her, standing just beyond the shaded entry archway with the envelope in hand. She wore sunglasses, a pale wrap dress, and the kind of expression that tried too hard to look unfazed. But her eyes darted. Her posture was tight. She saw the envelope before she saw me. "You filed," she said, voice barely above a whisper. I didn't say anything, just extended the envelope. She took it slowly. Her hands trembled more than I expected. She flipped it open. Her eyes scanned the first page, then the second. "You're divorcing me here?" she asked, disbelief painting her features. "On vacation?" "This isn't a vacation," I said. "Not anymore." She looked up, lips quivering. "You didn't even give me a chance to explain." "You had weeks," I replied. "You had opportunities. You had choices. You made them." "It was Brielle," she said quickly, too quickly. She pushed it. "She said it would be easier. She told me to say you were okay with sitting out. But you let her." I cut in. "You didn't just go along with it. You agreed. You invited him. Galen wasn't." "Maeve," I said firmly, "I saw the pictures. I saw the post. You let me plan the trip, book it, pay for it, and then you replaced me with someone who can't even spell Santorini without whispering it to a crystal first." She winced at that. "I didn't think you'd find out that way." "That's the thing," I said, softer now. "You didn't think about me at all." She lowered her gaze. The wind picked up a strand of her hair and tossed it across her cheek. She didn't brush it away. "I was unhappy," she said. "I felt disconnected. I thought maybe if I had space, if I could breathe, I'd figure things out. But everything just slipped. You didn't want space, I said. You wanted escape. You didn't want to fix us. You wanted to see if I'd let you break me. She shook her head. That's not true, isn't it? I asked. You knew I'd booked the trip. You knew I was stretched thin trying to make it perfect for you. And instead of choosing partnership, you chose performance. With your sister. With your guru. With your curated, comfortable narrative. She clutched the folder to her chest. I didn't expect you to react like this. Because you thought I'd just disappear? Her silence said everything. I reached into my back pocket and pulled out one more item, a smaller envelope. She looked at it, confused. What's this? Closure, I said, handing it to her. Inside was a printed copy of the booking receipt, dated and itemized. Every euro accounted for. The name at the top in bold, Micah Donovan, Donovan Holdings. There was also a copy of the guest manifest, original, edited, and final. Her edits, her deletions, her choice. And one handwritten note, folded neatly on top. I gave you the vacation of your dreams. You replaced me with someone you barely know. Enjoy your choice. She read it, blinked, then read it again. Her fingers tightened around the page like she was trying to crush the meaning out of it. I didn't think it would end like this, she said, almost to herself. I nodded. We never do. And then I walked away. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Because some goodbyes don't need confirmation. They just need a door to close. Back on the yacht, Jude was already sipping her tea. Eliza had set up a sketch pad near the railing, attempting to capture the cliffside buildings in soft pencil lines. Nico handed me a glass of something cold and citrusy. So, he asked. It's done, I said. He didn't ask for details. No one did. That's what I loved about this group. They didn't need me to narrate every fracture. They understood that some things were already spoken loud enough by the act itself. As we pulled away from the port, Santorini shrinking behind us, I exhaled. Not because I was free of Maeve, but because I was finally back in my own name. And this time, no one was crossing it out. By the time we returned home, I had no interest in explaining myself. Not to the people who'd written me out. Not to the ones who only noticed I was gone when the party lights dimmed. The yacht docked, the guests disembarked, and I walked down the same pier where it all started, this time, with a silence so solid it felt like armor. I didn't say a word to Maeve. I didn't need to. The divorce papers had already spoken. Our final communication had been through a courier, not a conversation. There were no more texts, no more explanations, no more soft whimpers of confusion followed by sideways blame. She signed the documents. Regina made it official. What we had wasn't paused, it was over. But I didn't expect the fallout to reach me so soon or so loudly. 2 days after I got back, I received a message from Nico with nothing but a link and 3 laughing emojis. It was an Instagram reel, posted by Galen. The thumbnail showed Brielle, red-faced, mid-rant, her hand jabbing through the air like she was conducting a symphony of fury. The video started with Galen filming himself walking up the driveway of some sleek rental home, probably Maeve's. He wore one of those smug half-smiles that made you want to slap the mindfulness out of him. His caption read, "When your business partner forgets you're the reason people showed up." Then it cut to the confrontation. Brielle screaming. Actual screaming. Do you know what you just did? That was our leverage. That trip was supposed to secure our funding. Maeve's voice, flustered but low. I didn't know he'd post. Because you're too busy pretending you're in love with someone you barely even like. Brielle shouted. The reel ended with Galen laughing into the camera, walking away as if none of it mattered. Like he was above it all. But the comments told another story. They were brutal. At Yoga isn't everything. Wait, you used someone else's yacht for your business pitch? At Real Retreats. Micah Donovan OWNS that charter, bro. This is bad. At Namaste Nikki. This is why I don't trust wellness entrepreneurs. I read them all. Not because I needed validation, but because it confirmed what I already knew. They hadn't just tried to replace me emotionally. They tried to profit off me. Brielle's plan, it turned out, was bigger than I'd realized. The trip was never just about family bonding. It was a calculated event. She had pitched it to investors as a soft launch for Galen's luxury retreat brand. Daily yoga, guided meditation, gourmet plant-based meals, a hand-picked clientele. All of it curated for content. And since the yacht was handled, they assumed they could slide their branding into every sunset shot. Too bad they didn't read the fine print. Or the ownership clause. When I saw the reel, I didn't get mad. I got methodical. I called Regina again. I need a cease and desist letter, I said. Use every angle, intellectual property, unauthorized promotion, name rights. Lock it down. She didn't hesitate. Already on it. Do you want to pursue damages? Not yet, I said. Let them bleed through embarrassment first. By the end of the week, Galen's website was down. His Instagram went private. And the retreat's Eventbrite link showed as canceled by organizer. The empire collapsed before it left port. Brielle, who had always carried herself like she was auditioning for a reality show, perfect angles, perfect quotes, perfect cruelty, suddenly disappeared from the group chat she used to post in daily. Her last post was a vague selfie captioned, "When people show you who they are, believe them." The comments were mostly blank. A few laughing emojis. One very pointed, "We did. I didn't speak publicly. I didn't write my side. I didn't defend myself. I let them sink on their own." But word spread. Friends I hadn't heard from in months started reaching out. "Damn, man. Didn't know all that went down? You good? Just saw the reel. Legendary. Quietest flex I've ever seen." One message came from an old college friend, Adam, who had started his own business development firm. He wanted to talk about potential partnerships. Said the way I handled things, clean, decisive, and silent, spoke volumes. We scheduled a lunch. Even people I hadn't expected, clients, colleagues, even Maeve's cousin Harper, reached out. Not with apologies, but acknowledgments. That was enough. But the one message that landed differently came late one evening. It was from Maeve. No emojis. No excuses. Just, "I lost more than I thought I could. I see that now." I stared at it for a long time. Not because I didn't expect it, but because I finally felt nothing reading it. That's when I knew I'd won. Not just in the public sense, not just in the way their plan crumbled while mine stood tall, but in the quiet, private sense. The peace, the freedom, the reclaiming of my name. Later that week, I returned to the marina to meet with the yacht company. They'd been so impressed with how the charter went and how I'd handled the chaos that they offered a deeper partnership. Said I had a calming executive presence. I almost laughed at that, but I accepted. It felt fitting. As I walked the docks that afternoon, a warm breeze rolling in off the water, I passed another couple boarding a charter. They were laughing, matching hats and all, unaware of the world outside their shared moment. I didn't envy them. Not anymore. Because I wasn't searching for a new chapter. I was writing in pen now. And every name that remained, I wrote it myself. I'm back on the yacht. Not because I need to be. Not because I'm hiding. But because there's something sacred about returning to the place where everything changed and knowing you're not the same person who stood there last time. The Andiamo rocks gently beneath my feet, the sea calm and obedient this morning, as if even the waves understand what it took to get here. The difference now is that I don't feel like a passenger. I feel like the helm was always meant for me. The captain greeted me with the same firm handshake, though this time there was something extra behind it, a quiet respect, not for the money I paid, but for how I carried myself. "Welcome back aboard, Mr. Donovan," he said. "The crew's happy to see you again." I nodded, thanked him, and stepped up to the command deck. I didn't ask to be shown around. I already knew the space intimately. The sun reflected off the control panel, gleaming against the polished chrome and teak. The view stretched endlessly ahead, water folding into itself like time, and for once, there wasn't a single shadow chasing me. People had asked me quietly, respectfully, how I managed to stay calm when the whole thing unraveled. How I didn't scream at the dock. How I didn't post call-outs or go on some scorched earth campaign to ruin everyone involved. The truth? Because power doesn't need noise. People who betray you expect spectacle. They count on your heartbreak turning into desperation, your pain transforming into chaos. They anticipate mess. But I've learned the best revenge is clarity, and clarity is silent. It moves in decisions, not declarations. I think that's why this boat feels different now. Not because anything physical changed, but because I no longer see it as a peace offering to someone else. It's mine. Not a symbol of excess or ego, but a boundary made manifest. Something real I built for someone who didn't appreciate it, but now stands for me alone. I sat at the edge of the bow with a coffee in hand, feeling the wind curl around me like a familiar coat. Eliza had joined me for the weekend again. No drama, no agenda, just peace. She wandered up from the galley with 2 muffins and a raised brow. "I figured I'd find you up here," she said, holding one out. "I like the view," I told her. "The sea?" "No, the distance." She laughed quietly, still poetic after all this time. We sat in companionable silence, watching the sun climb higher. There was no schedule, no packed itinerary, just the gift of stillness. Do you miss her? Eliza asked gently, not as a challenge, as a friend. I thought about it. Not about Maeve, the version she became, but about the idea of her. The nights we stayed up planning nothing, the time she danced in our kitchen with flour in her hair, the way she once clung to my arm during a storm on the rooftop of that Brooklyn hotel. I miss who I thought she was, I said finally, but not who she actually turned out to be. That's fair, she said, sipping her tea. Jude had sent me a letter last week. Yes, an actual letter. She'd written in beautiful looping script, thanking me for letting her be part of the great unmasking, as she called it. She said something that stuck with me. Sometimes the storm isn't what breaks us. It's what washes off the dirt others tried to bury us under. She was right. The betrayal didn't ruin me. It revealed me. It showed me what I could survive, what I could walk away from, and who I didn't need to chase anymore. Back home, things had quieted. Brielle hadn't posted in over 2 weeks. Galen's retreat business had gone from monthly ads to silence. Maeve hadn't reached out again. Her number still sat in my phone, unchanged, but the thread was empty. She knew better now. Or maybe she just knew I'd stopped waiting. I checked my messages only once that morning. A few work updates. A photo from Nico, him holding up a certificate from some ridiculous scuba course, grinning like a fool. Next yacht adventure. I'm certified. He'd written. Good. The people who showed up, stayed. That's the part that made everything worth it. Not just the justice, not just the control, it was remembering who remained. Who looked at me when I was erased and said, that doesn't make sense. He belongs. People like that? You hold on to them. Everyone else? Let the tide take them. I stood after a while and walked back into the helm. The crew gave me space, just like last time, but I felt their eyes on me differently now. Not just because I was the owner, but because they'd seen the whole story play out. Quietly, elegantly, with precision. And then I did something I hadn't done before. I grabbed the wheel. It wasn't symbolic. It was real. The captain gave a nod, stepping aside with a small smile. Take her forward whenever you're ready. I gripped the helm and eased it gently. The yacht responded. The water opened. And the world moved. Not because I'd shouted. Not because I'd fought to be heard. But because I stayed steady. Because I stayed true. Because they tried to replace me, and all they did was remind me I was irreplaceable. Now, when people ask me how I got through it, I don't tell them about the texts or the paperwork. I don't talk about screenshots or guest lists. I just say this. They planned a trip without me. I built the boat they tried to sail away on. And now I stand at the helm. Calm. Rooted. Untouchable. Because the best revenge isn't a shout. It's a whisper carried by the wind across an ocean they were never invited to sail.